Hope you had a great weekend, and welcome to the Ricky Mathews Show, the show that celebrates the men and women who are making this state such an amazing place to live, work, and play. We have a great guest today. We're gonna move to Rob Sigler here in just a second, but I wanted to share something with you. I was preparing for my outdoor show, and I ran across this quote that I'm actually going to share on my outdoor show, but I also thought, gosh, it kind of applies to some of the messages that we send out here on my show on a regular basis. And that is that, one of the things about social media and what it's done for us is it's kind of revealed people to us that may not have been necessarily smart. Now, I'm not pointing fingers at anybody, but you know who they are. Some people they either buy onto a narrative about something or they have something to say, and they don't come across very smart. And I wish there was a way. Actually, I have to be honest with you. I was going to say I wish there was a way to deal with that. But the way I've dealt with it to some extent is I've actually blocked a few people along the way because I just didn't want to. I didn't want to take it. I have my world. So a lot of my world is public, but a lot of my world is not public, and I literally still have the ability to take people out of my world. And if someone is overly negative or overly dumb, I just I try to help them the best I can. But if they're unhelpable, if they prove themselves unhelpable, then I kind of I banish them from Ricky's world, and that's just what I do. And I know a lot of friends who do that too. I'll be curious to hear if my next guest Rob Sigler feels that way. But I ran across this quote that I thought had these beautiful mountains and all this greenery behind it. And I thought, oh wow, this is going to be a short and sweet, beautiful quote. And then it got funny real quick. But this is what the quote says: "The closer you are to nature, the further you are from idiots." I thought that was perfect. The closer you are to nature, the further you are from idiots. Gosh, come on now. I don't like the word idiot because I think everybody deserves redemption and an opportunity. But at the end of the day, that's one of the benefits of actually going outdoors and taking a deep breath of salt air and getting, with your own thoughts, is sometimes you can get away from some of the people around you who you might feel that way about. And I'm not saying give up on them, because everybody, as I said, deserves redemption. But boy, social media has revealed some. That is for sure. That is for sure. And nobody's going to argue with me on that one. I know that. If you have a different point of view, go to the Ricky Mathews Facebook page and weigh in. We'd love to hear your point of view. Okay, so anyway, let's move over now to my friend Rob Sigler. Rob, in his day job, works for Cruising the Coast, and we've had terrific conversations with him the last time we talked about that. But he's also an opinion contributor, a thought leader, we call them, at SuperTalk Mississippi News. And he most recently wrote a column that we'll get to here in just a second. His second submission, and he's going to be awesome as a contributor because of his experience in news across the state of Mississippi. I'm excited to have him back on the show. Rob, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good, Ricky. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Hey, listen, I really, really enjoyed our last visit together. And, for viewers, they need to hear this, that Rob and I, as I mentioned in the show, our paths didn't cross, although they should have, because we were kind of coming along at about the same time. He was a little bit behind me in age. But then we got to be friends on Facebook, but even to this moment, not that I'm aware of, have actually met each other in person.
Never shook your hand.
Yeah, so Rob and I, we got to know each other the first time he was on the show a couple of weeks ago. But I felt like I already knew him because we've been sharing and quoting, not quoting, but commenting on each other's Facebook pages, and had deep respect for the experience that he had in Picayune and Meridian and Laurel and Oxford and Vicksburg in the newspaper business, and the role that he's now playing at Cruising the Coast. But it's been good to get to know him. He's a really good thinker, and it's been fun, hasn't it, buddy, to write like that? I know you've written some other stuff, but for other entities, but to have a sort of a regular gig to introduce some important conversations into the statewide conversation, that's pretty cool.
It is very cool. I appreciate the opportunity that y'all have given me to continue to voice some of my thoughts and views and feelings on issues that impact, I think, all of us in the state of Mississippi and across this nation.
What's the feedback been for you?
it's been really positive. People that I've been colleagues with for years, have said it's great to see that you're still writing and still putting your thoughts out there on digital rather than in print. But it's been really positive so far. Hopefully it'll keep up.
Well, the first piece you wrote was about gun violence, and it was a really important conversation. In fact, I had the opportunity a few mornings ago to do a speech at the Heart Association CEO breakfast, telling my CPR stories, the story of having to do mouth-to-mouth on my granddaughter, and she's doing fine, incidentally, but to share some stories about CPR. But while I was there, though, it seemed, Leonard Papanian was there, Jace Payne was there, Fofo Gillich was there. A number of important CEOs from across the coast of Mississippi were there. But, it's interesting, man. The conversations inevitably, any long conversations that I had inevitably went back to gun violence. A lot of concern. Hunter Dawkins and I had a deep conversation about it recently. But, the most recent shooting in Ocean Springs on Government Street, you had the spring break shooting that you and I talked about. You had the young man from Pass Christian that went over to Hancock County and shot a bunch of people. And I mean, the list goes on and on. We've got some challenges in society. It's not just a local problem. It's a problem in our country that's going to take some real leadership to solve. In fact, Leonard, I'm going to have him on the show coming up here pretty soon. Leonard thinks that certainly we can have a national conversation, but the results, the real work on the ground needs to happen in every single local community. That's the way we solve this. But I appreciate your willingness to write that. It was a really important piece, and it probably felt good to get it out there and have conversations about it.
It did, and I've had conversations since then about this topic. It's been an issue that I think it has been a problem in our state, in our community for a very long time. And it's good to know that people are starting to take having serious conversations about it and take the issue more serious than maybe we have in the past. Society is changing, for various reasons. And then, it's time for us to find out what the solutions are to this problem of gun violence, and in particular with young people, and why they seem to turn more towards gun violence to supposedly solve problems rather than, talk it out or, get together and have conversations. They turn to guns for one reason or another. And it's an issue that seems to be very prevalent. I think, as we talked previous conversation, very prevalent among our younger generation.
Yeah, you see the shooting on Highway 90 during spring break, the absolute disregard for human life, just in this crowded place to just start, shooting with with no care at all whether the bullet kills people or not. It's just same situation in the Government Street shooting in Ocean Springs. Walks into that facility, and apparently there was some person that he was seeking, but a number of bystanders are shot in the process. Really no care whatsoever about whether there's going to be, anyone's going to be hurt from their action. We hear that over and over and over again. And that has to do a lot about the state of mind some of these shooters are in. I mean, they haven't been taught to worry about ramifications like that. They themselves may be scared to death, and maybe they don't think they're going to live tomorrow. You and I went through all of that before. But, boy, I tell you one thing, Rob, this is a conversation that's not going to go away. It's going to continue to go on. And, here on this show, while this show is really about celebrating, I'm going to celebrate leaders that are willing to have this conversation. And I'm planning to have church leaders and community leaders and people of all walks of life to come in and talk about how they're dealing with it. And we got to focus on it big time. So anyway, thanks for that contribution for sure. Hey, before we get to your column, which is about child abuse, so something that's really, really close to my heart, and something as a paramedic I saw too much of, and this was many years ago, but still major problem in society. I want to get to kind of the latest from you about about cruising the coast. You guys have been busy. There's no downtime for this group that's always barreling toward October. But there's a lot of activities this time of year, isn't there, Rob?
there's a lot going on. We plan, it's a year-round event for us to plan for the event that's coming up. There's 3 of us here in the office full time that work for Cruising, and Mr. Bailey and Craig Rosoli and myself are the 3 full-time people that kind of make it all come together as far as the planning aspect of it. But we rely on all the volunteers. Pretty soon we'll be setting up other events that are going to be coming along. We recently added, I think Mr. Bailey spoke with you the other day about adding Waveland to one of our venues. So we've got a lot going on with Cruising.
We'll actually pick that up on the other side and sort of button up the Cruise and the Coast conversation. It's exciting. What a great event for Coastal Mississippi as we continue our conversation with thought leader for SuperTalk Mississippi News, and he works for Cruise and the Coast, Rob Sigler. We'll see you on the other side. Welcome back to our newly named show, about 2 weeks into the process, and the feedback has been terrific. Thank you for listening. You might be listening on 103.1 or SuperTalk TV or Facebook, YouTube, or your favorite podcast. We don't care how you interact with this show as long as you interact with the show, because when you interact with the show, you're learning with us what it takes to make a community like Coastal Mississippi, like Mississippi for that matter, tick. And so many great guests. I haven't had a dud day, Rob Sigler from Cruising the Coast and a thought leader for SuperTalk Mississippi Media. I look back on over 800 conversations, and I don't see a dud in the group. It's just been so much fun bringing these amazing people to these important conversations. I missed that when I was a publisher, and I know you probably missed writing more, and now you get that opportunity.
Absolutely. I miss writing. I miss all the aspects of it. I don't miss the deadlines as much as you might think, but I do miss the writing aspect of it. So I enjoyed contributing to SuperTalk, and I also get an opportunity to write a few feature stories for some of the magazines around the state. And I've actually done some paginating and layout and design for some of the magazines. So I still have my finger in it a little bit. So it's good to be able to help you all out with it too. So.
One of the, I'm thrilled that we have a relationship. SuperTalk Mississippi News has a relationship with Coast Young Professionals, and they're writing this Next Step column. These are not leaders that are in the beginning stages of understanding leadership development in the community. They're very far along in their process, and they're ready to be the next leaders of the various organizations of Coastal Mississippi. And I had an awesome conversation with Erin Rossetti, who has a key communication role at Memorial Hospital in Gulfport. And she wrote a column. Jace Payne wrote the first one, the president of CYP, who works for the city of Gulfport, wrote the first one, and then she wrote the second one. And she gets into a lot of details about Mississippi's perception, the perception of Mississippi, and how that sometimes can get in the way of people wanting to move here. And once they get here, they see something completely different than that. I don't think our leaders feel the responsibility, though. I mean Democrats and Republicans alike, they should feel more responsibility for making sure that the messages that are going outside the state don't somehow confirm some false narrative about us. But I hate to say it, but too often they do. We have to have more courage. I just think courage. In fact, I might have a whole show around courage. But as a former newspaper editor, you know that word courage, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It takes a lot of guts sometimes to write that story that's the truth, that might offend some people. It might, I've been in that situation before where a story was not very popular with, certain aspects of the community, but it's a story that has to be written, and you have to show a lot of courage and a lot of guts to go out there and do that, to keep people informed about their communities. And community newspapers are vital to everywhere. I mean, Mississippi included, the Gulf Coast included. I think they're a vital aspect of any community that's viable and looking to grow and bring in businesses and other people to come to that community. They want to know what's happening in that community, whether it's good or bad. Hopefully, most of it's good. But there are times when you just have to write that story that may not be popular with a lot of folks. So, yeah, I'm very familiar over a 30-year career about, having the guts to write that story or publish that story in the paper. So,
I ran across this quote from Thomas Paine recently. It will ring so true to you. It certainly did to me. And here's what Thomas Paine said: a body of men holding themselves accountable to nobody ought not be trusted by anybody.
Right.
Gosh, is that true or what?
That is very true. That's about as true as it gets right there. Yeah, we all have to be held accountable, whether or not you're in public office or whatever the case might be. But as communities, it's important to all of us to be informed, stay informed, and be involved in our communities. And that definitely is true of newspapers and journalism on the local level.
Well, I saw. I won't get into the specific issue here, but there was an issue that I got locked on to on SuperTalk Mississippi, SuperTalk Outdoors, excuse me. And what I've learned through studying that issue is that there hasn't been enough public accountability in the conservation community as there used to be. And the reason for that is that outdoor reporters and a large number of others that might have been interested in these kind of topics, environmental topics, conservation topics, hunting and fishing, regulations and policies, that kind of stuff. That with the shrinking of newspapers across the state, we don't have resources that are focused on that anymore. You've got a couple of people in the state who are, but they tend to just cover fishing and hunting and the process of outdoor recreation and not the policies behind them. Right. So you've had this long drawn out time now where people with personal interest have gotten involved in certain issues. And I've been extremely respectful, to be honest with you, about the way that I've called them out. Very respectful. In fact, I have tremendous sources, and I'm not saying 99% of what I know. So the 1% of what I know that I'm saying, it's got so many of them running for the hills because they're not used to the accountability. Right. And there's been an incredible effort behind the scenes to try to silence my voice, which is impossible. They're not going to be able to silence my voice. But they tried. So it's so interesting because people who would otherwise care deeply about conservation and the topic, they intuitively understand why we need to do that, whatever that topic might be. But because they know someone who they're politically connected to or have some financial interest in, or maybe they're their friend, because of that, they're willing to support their friend's personal interest over what's best for the state. And we have too many people that do that over and over and over again. And what Thomas Paine says, a body of men holding themselves accountable to nobody ought not be trusted by anybody. And the role that newspapers and media and TV and radio and everybody plays in bringing light to these important topics, man, it can't be underestimated because this is democracy in action. We're news and information that people can trust, I might add, are what makes democracy viable. And, I used to say that in speeches all the time, but after Katrina, I came to really appreciate it even more. But, doing something like an outdoor show, you wouldn't think that I would get a great lesson again in this, but I do. You wouldn't believe the efforts underway to try to silence my voice. But it's just a reminder that when we take the light off, when we're not shining the light, then bad things can happen, or at least maybe some people may not say that's a bad thing, but in other words, actions could be taken that are contrary to the public interest. That's the point I'm making. You see that you've seen in your career what happens when you take the light off, haven't you?
All the time, more frequently than I would like to say. But yeah, all the time you see where corruption in state government can run rampant, or in local government, in any environment of government. If you take the light off of it, don't hold people accountable, then anything can happen. That's the role that newspapers and journalism, legitimate newspapers and journalism have to be involved in. They have to be the ones that are the voice for the people to say, hey, look, this is wrong. Something needs to be done about it, and let folks, make up their own minds about it and determine what's best for everyone overall, not just a few select people who have their own interests in mind rather than all of us. So,
Rob, that's extremely well said. And one of the great things about SuperTalk Mississippi Media News and our shows that are statewide and regional, and our news effort going to 51 radio stations, is that at a time when radio stations are doing a lot of conglomerating to a national approach, as we've discussed in the past, SuperTalk has done just the opposite. They've become more local. They've made their news effort more stronger. And so with the void of resources falling at newspapers across the state, I mean, I'm talking about significant decline in the number of resources at these newspapers. And really the TV stations and I mean, the truth is it's a problem in media in general. With the fall in resources, it creates an opportunity for SuperTalk to fill a void, and man, they're doing a good job of doing it. So that on a show like mine, I can raise the concern and bring people to the awareness around it. And you said that, this one particular issue is about a lot of one or two or three politically connected people that have been able to sort of manipulate the system in their regard. I'm not saying they're doing anything illegal. The point is that corruption, go to look at the definition of corruption. Corruption doesn't necessarily mean that someone's doing something illegal. It's just that it means that they're manipulating the system in a way that will serve them. And some issues that I see in the conservation community are corrupt. They're absolutely corrupt. And we've got to bring credibility back to these debates and conversations. And the process of getting them there, you got to have thick skin. You got to have correct courage. But I have a long history of learning how to be courageous. I have had some tough conversations in my life, and I'm thrilled that SuperTalk's in the middle of those conversations today. Hey, when we come back, we'll get back with Rob Sigler and talk about his most recent column about child abuse. Really, really important column. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to the Ricky Mathews Show. I have my friend Rob Sigler. I really enjoy chatting with him. And again, I say this a lot, but some of the best conversations actually happen during the break. And one day we'll just keep the mic running and make sure we don't lose anything important. But he and I both go back a long way in the news media. And so we've got the scars to show for it. But with the scars, create some calyx. And from calyx, you get courage. And from courage, you're willing to go to subjects that are not popular sometimes, but need to be talked about. And, so that's actually one of the reasons I'm thrilled that Rob Sigler is now a thought leader for SuperTalk Mississippi News and writing a regular column. First one about gun violence, the second one incredibly powerful about child abuse. So Rob, let's get to the column itself. Why don't you, if you're talking to someone about sort of the thesis for your column that you wrote, how do you talk about it?
Well, basically, I've always been an advocate for children. I think everybody, that's a given for just about any human being, that, children are the most important aspect of our lives, in my opinion. And when you harm a harmless child, that really hits my heart hard. And there was an issue that came up about 5 years ago where a family that I'm very familiar with had to deal with the aspect of child abuse, where one of their nephews, grandsons, was a victim of child abuse. And I saw them have to deal with that. And it touched my heart. And, I felt like, that was something that we haven't really discussed a whole lot as people. It's kind of in the shadows, so to speak. And I think we need to shine more light upon that issue, aspect of child abuse. And so I wrote a column about it, several years ago, and I wouldn't say viral, but it was spread quite a bit to a lot of folks about this particular instance that took place that impacted my family and this family in particular. And so ever since, I've kind of been taking this issue of child abuse personal. And when we had the issue with a young boy here in Gulfport a few weeks ago that was a victim of child abuse, unfortunately, he passed away. And, that kind of made me think again, this is something as a community that we should be more involved in to, try to protect the children that are, to me, the most important part of our lives. They are our future, literally our future. and they need to be protected and raised in environments where they're not victims of abuse. And that, to me, that's very important. And that one aspect, like I said, hit home for me a few years ago. And then the issue that came up here recently got me to thinking that, this is something that as a community need to do more about. If you see something, do something. If you suspect something, say something. It's important that we just don't turn a blind eye to what we suspect or what we think might be going on, and let people that can do something about it aware of the situation. So that's kind of where the column generated from, was that personal issue that my family went through. And also with the recent passing of this young 5-year-old child in Gulfport. And it hits home for me, Ricky, with kids and stuff. Kids are, they have a soft spot in my heart. So they always have. Being a father, I just could not imagine what they went through, what the family that I spoke about 5 years ago, what they've gone through. Fortunately, this young boy is now in his preteens, doing fantastic. I just wish there were more outcomes like his that we could discuss and talk about it. But unfortunately, as I put in the column, more than 600,000 children in our nation are victims of child abuse. I believe the numbers in my column speak for themselves, but we just look at them as just numbers sometimes. We don't think about them as individual people, and I think that's where we need to focus more upon, that these are real numbers, not just statistics.
Thank you so much for bringing that to the forefront to talk about it. This has always been an important conversation for me as well. I had 3 kids, and then I have 4 grandkids, and I coached ball for most of their lives, and had met so many wonderful kids, and some along the way I watched their relationship with their family, and I worried about them. Never knew anything specific, but worried about it. But as a publisher, I often was very much in touch with the social worker community, with the youth court judges who often see a lot of not so good stuff, the law enforcement community, the mental health community, and dealing with folks who are in the foster care industry, the Women's Resource Center. What we discover is that a lot of kids that are impacted, there's some issue with mental health in that family. There's drug and alcohol abuse often, very often, somewhat. There are economic strains in some way or the other. One of the issues I got really locked onto early in the tenure of this show, and had numerous shows about it, was the issue of human trafficking. And what I learned, when we think about human trafficking, we often think about it being in Africa or some far-flung place, but actually, human trafficking, the most prevalent human trafficking, actually can happen within a family. It's a family member bringing a young boy or girl into some kind of a bad situation, sexually oriented, in fact. And it could be in your neighborhood. It could be, right there. And I've had long conversations with the Attorney General about this, with the Secretary of State, many others, about this issue of human trafficking in Mississippi. And Mississippi, the Speaker of the House and I have had full shows about it. Mississippi's done a lot of good legislation out there to really kind of push this conversation forward. But you have to deal it within the context of all these various dimensions, and it's hard. And what I've most learned, Rob, is that people, as a general rule, it's hard to think about a kid being abused to the point that they die. It's for most people, it's out of sight, out of mind, and to contemplate it is painful. So people don't think about it because it's hard to think about it. Is that what you find as well?
Absolutely. People want to think about, happier things, and they can't believe that this is actually something that might be happening, and they just kind of block it out. I think I'm not sure if that's a normal reaction to something, but to me, the reaction is to try to protect that child or protect, our children, and not block it out, but to shine light on it and say hey, this is an issue. This is a problem that needs to be dealt with, whether it's through legislation. State leaders need to get involved and pass more laws that are more stringent against child abusers. I don't know specifics on what the standards are for child abuse and how prison sentences and that type of thing are, but to me they're not. It's not anywhere near what it should be. I think a person who would abuse a child intentionally is the lowest person that imaginable. Whether it's a family member or a friend or a child that just down the street. I mean, child abusers, in my opinion, are the, I hate to use the word scum, but to me that's what they are. They're just low life people that take advantage of children in one way or another by abusing them, whether it's a parent or if it's not. I think in my statistics in the article that I wrote, 77% of children who are abused by a parent. And to me, that's unfathomable. I mean, I just cannot believe that, that would be the case is a parent would actually abuse their own child to the point, like you say, where, it could lead to death. And that's just very sad. And I think it's something that we as a community need to take note of and do more about, whether, like I say, is it through legislation or whatever. But as individuals, we can always report it and say, hey, I think there might be something going on, and let those in charge investigate it and determine if there is an issue there. But people have to step up and say something. That's where it starts at. Is you step up and say something and say, I suspect this might be taking place. I don't have any proof. You may have proof, and if you do have proof, then you need to go and take it to the authorities and say this is what's happening, and something needs to be done. But as communities and society, I don't think we do enough of that, simply because you look at the statistics, and the statistics are astronomical. So obviously we're not doing enough to protect our children.
Well, you saw during the pandemic, statistics went up more because kids were locked in the homes with their families, and those who were going to be abused, it just increased the occurrence, or at least the opportunity for that to happen. Hey, when we come back on the other side, we'll continue our conversation with thought leader for SuperTalk Mississippi News, Rob Sigler, on his most recent topic, child abuse. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to the Ricky Mathews Show. I'm visiting with my friend Rob Sigler. Long history of a newspaper editor across the state of Mississippi. Most recently, he works with Cruising the Coast, but he's writing a column for SuperTalk Mississippi News as a thought leader, and we're thrilled to have him on our team. You can actually go to supertalk.fm and click on news and then click on opinion to see his column. You can go to the SuperTalk Mississippi website, the SuperTalk Mississippi Facebook site, and we'll actually have a link to his story with or his column with this show, so you can have access to it there as well. But Rob, one of the things that you said, there is we were talking during the break that there's probably a very significant connection between the environment that these kids are in that involves potential child abuse, and then sort of the evolving issue around gun violence because of the kind of situations that they may be raised in. And the gun violence issue is one that's going to take years and years to solve. It may begin actually with someone making a phone call and saying they're worried about that child. And your point just a few minutes ago was that if you see something or suspect something, call somebody, call 911 and tell them. Because what's going to happen after that is that the law enforcement community is going to go into full gear. I know for a fact from my conversations with judges and the DA and long list of others, they care extremely deeply about the issue of child abuse, and they will aggressively seek out what the situation is, and the goal would be to protect the child. So if you're initially wanting results, the best results you can get is make a phone call and let them do an investigation, and then Sometimes that leads to the child being taken into some kind of protective custody or whatever the situation might be. But, an early way to help maybe contribute to the gun violence is for people to be more engaged in conversations like this so that authorities can be alerted so that we can, in some cases, maybe take that child out of that abusive environment and give them a chance to succeed in their life. I read something the other day that said if you haven't taught a kid by the time they're 5 what no means, you got big trouble. So, this all goes hand in glove to some of these other solutions that we've been talking about. But, man, I would say the most important message that you send by at least bringing the conversation about child abuse back into the forefront is simply this. If you see something or you suspect something, call somebody because it could save that kid's life, couldn't it, Rob?
Absolutely. And, that's what we're all trying to do is protect this child and get them in a situation where they can, flourish as individuals and have a chance in life. So I think it starts with us as a community to do something if we suspect something and, see where it goes from there. Like you say, law enforcement, judges, all those who get involved and maybe this child can be saved and given a chance to thrive in an environment that is more conducive to being a good citizen of our community. And I think that's what we all want. We want all our children to succeed and be part of society and be successful and all of that. So, yeah, I think it starts with us as individuals. If we think something's going on that's not right, then it's up to us to do something about it. This child, can't speak up for themselves. Who knows what the case might be. It might be too scared to say something. So us as adults need to do more. I think our teachers do a great job at that kind of thing. I think, coaches and things like that, do a great job of noticing these things and do a good job of reporting it if they see something. At least I hope they do. I hope most of them do. But I think with the teachers that I've talked to and the coaches that I've known over the years, if they suspect something's going on, they'll let the authorities know about it. And I think it's up to us also to let authorities know about something if it doesn't seem right.
If it doesn't seem right, let somebody know. Rob, one of the things I'll commit to you, and I really appreciate you kind of pushing both of these subjects, gun violence and child abuse, that in future conversations with judges and DAs and the law enforcement community, I'll always make these two items part of the conversation. Now, look, gun violence is going to be part of those conversations anyway. But the reality is we should be more aggressive about those conversations, and we should have those conversations more often. We're probably not having them enough. So it's in the public consciousness about what are some of the things we can do? What can a pastor in the community do? What can a community leader do? What can a principal at a school do, or a teacher at a school? And a coach, you pointed these out as it relates to child abuse. But, everyone who is a leader in the community, the closer to the situation we can get, the more possibilities are going to arise around how we solve the problem. And it's not one action. It's going to be hundreds of actions taken in unison because we all care deeply about the issue, and we want to seek a resolution. That's the way it's going to be fixed. That's what Leonard Papania said to me the other morning, and he was right. It's going to happen on the local level. We need an important conversation on the national level for sure. We need it on every level. But boy, the rubber's going to hit the road in the local communities. Thanks for your continued contributions to SuperTalk Mississippi News, and I can't wait to read your next column, my friend.
I'm working on it as we speak, so it'll be coming out pretty soon. And I look forward to talking with you again here in the near future, Ricky.
You bet, Rob. It's been a pleasure. This has been Rob Sigler. And anyway, I've really enjoyed that conversation. This is what thought leaders do. They force us to have important conversations that sometimes we don't want to have. Have a great day, and we will see you tomorrow.